I'm John Tuteur. I currently am the Assessor, Recorder, County Clerk, Registrar of Voters for Napa County. And prior to that, I was a county supervisor back before you were born in the 70s. So I was county supervisor from 73 to 80. And my job is, as assessor, which is why I'm talking to you today, is to be fair, not to raise money. I work for all of you. I'm an elected official, and therefore my job is to make sure the assessment's correct. I don't care if it's high or low. Now I have to tell you a little story. Florence put on her mailer 2151 Main Street, downtown Napa. So I read it as 1251. So I just walked from Napa, which is good for me. That's why I'm still going at 84.
So John, before we get started, That's okay. I just want to welcome everyone here. My name is Florence Fopelasti. I'm the founder of l'Agence Napa Valley. This is Nicole Douglas. She's an agent here as well. Olivia Lely, also an agent here. So this is a boutique real estate agency in downtown.
Stretched. No. A lot.
So one of the big things that we specialize in is helping people navigate important transitions, whether it's downsizing, relocating, or simply exploring what the next chapter might look like. So that's exactly why we put this workshop together. Very grateful to you to take time out of your day, and you basically told us whenever you want me here, I'd be there. And that's quite wonderful because John is always available. If you have a question about Prop 19 or property taxes, you can call him and he'll be the one picking up the phone. It's quite impressive. So thank you. Probably so grateful to the community.
And my pleasure.
Yes. So I want to make everybody feel very comfortable. There is no pressure today. This is simply a place to learn and ask questions and simply explore what the next chapter for you might look like. John is here to introduce Prop 19, tell you how it works, and answer any questions you may have about that. And after today, you still have questions and you want to know how it applies to you from a timing, value, or next step perspective. I and my team will be very happy to help you with that. So
thank you for that. Merci, Florence. My contact information is the last slide, so you'll have that. Do you want me to run this, young lady?
Yes, if you can, and I think you just need.
Yeah. Great. All right. So as I said, my job is to make sure that no one pays more property taxes than they should. That's part of fairness. And as Florence said, I'm always available and my contact information will be there. I answer my own phone. I don't believe in layers between me and the public. And I respond to email. Currently, I'm 52 emails behind, but I'm catching up as fast as I can. So Proposition 19, let me give you a little history. Proposition 13 passed in 1978 when I was actually on the Board of Supervisors, which is coming up on 50 years ago, believe it or not. It'll be 50 years on June 3rd of 2028. I'll be running for re-election that year, so that's interesting. And Prop 13 upended how assessments were done in California. Essentially, it locked in the purchase price or the cost of new construction, and then it only went up 2% a year after that. Before that, the assessor went into every neighborhood every 4 years and raised values depending on what the market was. Somebody could have not painted their house for 30 years or not done anything, could be in deteriorating condition, but we'd make an adjustment for quality. But if the houses in the area were selling for $200,000, we'd assess theirs at $200,000, especially if it was in good condition. And people saw their in 1977, taxes were going up, or values were going up 2% a month. So it was a 24% increase between 76 and 78, which is why Proposition 13 passed. And what it did, it locked in the base year value. And then it only can go up 2% a year, not a month. And so if you've owned and other people have this misconception that Prop 13 only applies if you owned your home in 1975, which is the base year. That's not true. Who bought their home that you're currently in, say in the 90s? Give me a year. All right, so your base year is a 1999 base year, and it's been going up 2% since that. Okay, so it doesn't matter. You get a Prop 13 base year value when you buy. And the reason the Prop 19 is important is that you can keep that base year value and take it with you. One other piece of news about Prop 19, so when Prop 13 passed, there was only a 2% increase. There was no mechanism if values went down. California was not used to values going down, but the condominium market hit a huge bump in the early 1980s. And so a second proposition was passed that allowed the assessor to adjust values down. And then in 1986, because people were complaining, they would die and their children would get a new assessment because there was no circuit breaker. The legislature passed a parent-to-child exclusion in 1986, and they also passed a base year transfer because people were staying in their home, which is not good for the economy, just because they didn't want to pay higher taxes. So there was a Prop 60, which was a base year transfer, but that was only within the same county, and it was only if you bought down. Okay? So that protected people who, as Florence said, who were downsizing, but it didn't protect people who needed, they had to be over 55 or severely disabled, much like Prop 19. So that, and then parent to child was not just your principal residence, it was also any other kind of property, commercial, rental houses, industrial, agricultural, you could pass to your children. There was a limit as to how much value you could pass, but it wasn't based just on one category. So in 2018, the realty industry put a measure on the ballot to allow base year transfers across the state from any county to any county. There was a program where about 10 counties had agreed to accept base year transfers, like you could inside the county, but again, you had to buy down. So the real estate industry, and it's turned out, as the realtors will know, to be a great marketing technique and a good thing to allow people to change how they're living. That measure failed. So the legislature pulled together, and the reason it failed was there was a lot of opposition from those groups that depend on property taxes. Schools, labor unions, police, fire, they need property taxes, and they saw keeping the base year value and dragging it all over the state as cutting into revenue. Not my job, but they do need to pay attention to that. So the legislature worked out a compromise. And what has somebody said about a compromise is the worst you can come out of two good ideas. So in order to protect revenues, they allowed base year transfers all around the state, and you didn't have to buy down. You could buy up. If you buy up, then I'll show you, we add the difference between what you sold for and what you bought for to the base year value you're bringing from San Diego or wherever. But the main thing when they did was they totally changed the parent to child to make it, one, that it had to be the principal residence of the parent, and two, the child had to move in. And if they didn't move in, it got reassessed. So that was, and the Prop 19 was on the ballot and passed, but people didn't catch the second part of it. And so we have reassessed over 400 properties a year that before Prop 19 would have been protected by the parent to child. They no longer are because they're not a principal resident of the parent or the child's not going to move in. So that was one thing that restricted a little bit the impact on revenues by making it so tight. And beyond that, the principal residence, there's $1 million buffer. So if your home on the day you transfer it to your child, whether it's by inheritance or gift or sale, the fair market value of the property is taken by the assessor. So let's say and I'll talk about that in a minute. That was another limiting factor. But the main limitation that was going to help the economy, help the revenues, was to not allow rentals, commercial property, with very few exceptions, agricultural property, to be protected from parent to child. So that's why Prop 19 is what it is and where it is. And it's very popular and it works well. I mean, it's been an impact on our office administratively, but that's my job. You pay my salary so that I can do what the law says. And we've been doing it. I'm personally handling most Prop 19s, and we are right up to date. We often get the claim form back from the person within a week of when they bought the second piece of property. So I'm going to go through it briefly. Let's see. I don't want to stand in front. I'll stand over here. So all 58 California counties now are available to move from and to. Before it was inside the county or only 10 counties. The second thing, you must be 55 on the day you sell your original residence. You can be 53 and buy a replacement because the market's hot or you want that house, but you can't sell your original until you're 55. That's the key date. 50. I think there are one or two people here who may be 55, but if you are, that's the key date, is the date you sell your original, not the date you buy the replacement. And now you can move up. You don't have to buy down. And you can do it 3 times. So we only need one claimant. So I always say to couples who are approaching me about a Prop 58, I always say, rather than who is the more mature person, I say, who has the earlier birthday? And then we have that person be the claimant because they each have 3 times. And I've had one woman already use it 3 times. She didn't like it, bought again, and then moved to be near her kids. So she's done it 3 times, but that's the only one I know of, probably in the whole state of California, even though this has been in place since 2021. And finally, we add the difference when we move the base year. So I just had one today. They paid I'm going to use this example because I remember it. They paid $1,175,000 for a piece of property in Napa. They came from Rio Vista. They sold that property or are selling it for $395,000. They'll say they sell it for $375,000 because then there's $800,000. It makes it simpler. Their base year value in Rio Vista is $300,000, say. So we're going to take that $800,000 difference they bought up by that much, add it to the $300,000. So when they get here, they're going to be at $1.1 million instead of $1.175 million. So they're still going to save about $800 a year in property taxes because of the $75,000 difference. In my example, it was $2 million and $3 million, but it's the same thing. So they sold for $2 million. They buy for $3 million. The base year of the original is $500,000, and that's happening. I had one woman in San Francisco, her base year value was $80,000. She'd been there since 1940 or something, and she sold for $2.6 million, right? So that $500,000, we add the $1 million difference and come up to $1.5 million, right? But they paid $3 So they're saving $1.5 million in value, which is over $15,000 a year in property taxes. And that's the usual occasion. It's not where it's that close in the one I mentioned from Rio Vista. I've had a couple of those because they came from counties where the values aren't as high as they are here. By the way, questions are welcome at any time, or comments, or if there's something you need me to go over. Any questions so far?
$1 million difference.
Right. Yeah. Whatever that difference is gets added to the base year that you're bringing from the former house. Yes.
On a transfer, say that you know for 2 years.
That's the second part. I'm talking about base year. We'll get into that in a minute. That's a separate part of Prop 19. Yeah. I will. Sorry, I brought that up, but this is focused on this. I'll talk about that briefly. I took those slides out because this was primarily noticed as a base year transfer, but I can talk about it. That's a great question. Just hold it till I get there. Any other questions here? So if the replacement purchase price is less than the sales price, your base year just comes, right? The purchase and sale must take place within 2 years. So as I said, you can buy your replacement now. So say you buy it on May 1st, 2026, you've got to sell your original by April 30th, 2028, or you won't get the benefit. And we've had a couple of people who didn't make it. The market was different where they were selling and they just didn't make the 2 years. And that's not bad. It's just they don't get the benefit. But that 2 years, and if you're thinking of waiting until you're 55 to sell your original, make sure you calculate the 2 years because you've got to buy the replacement 1 day after your birthday if you buy it 2 years earlier so that you fit in that 2 year if you're going to wait that long. So the other thing, if you buy the replacement first, and this happens quite a bit, there is no adjustment to the sale price. So there is an adjustment to the sale price. If you sell first, say you sell for $1 million, and you wait a full year before you buy the replacement, you get a 5% benefit because you waited a year. If you wait more than a year, but not more than 2 years, you get a 10% benefit. So if you sell for $1 million, your sale price will be $1,100,000 if you buy in that second year. And that's what will compare to what you pay for the new home. So if you buy for 2, you get only $900,000, not $1 million, because you waited a year. I'm not suggesting anybody wait a year, but those kinds of things do occur. If you buy first and still make it within the 2 years, you pay the higher taxes until you sell the original, because you can't move your base year until you've sold the home, right? So if you pay $3 million in Napa, you're going to pay on $3 million. You sell a year and 6 months later, we're then going to bring that value in and you'll get a refund from that point forward and you'll get your base year, but you will have paid the higher taxes before that. And then finally, the base year. So let's go back to that first slide. Oops, too many. So let's say this person decides to do it again. Remember, they bought up by $1 million. Their base year in Napa is $1.5 million. It's not the $500,000 from San Diego. So if you do it a second time, now it could be, if you didn't buy up, you can keep taking that base year value with you. And I've had adult children take advantage of the parent to child and then sell that house, and they get that base year value because they qualified, their parents' base year value because they qualified for it. Yeah, the child has to be over 55. So our daughter just made it. She turned 55 in December. So Now, here's an issue that you have to be very careful of. A lot of people, even in Napa County, don't have their homeowner exemption, which is something you automatically get if you own and occupy your own home. You're entitled to a homeowner's exemption, and that saves you $71 a year in property taxes. That isn't a lot, but it also is proof that it's your original residence. And remember, the one you sell, you got to sell, you can't sell a rental and buy a principal residence. You've got to sell a principal residence and buy a principal residence. So the three major tests are where you're registered to vote and the address on your driver's license if you didn't have your homeowners. Now, I've learned of people, because the real estate industry, like Florence and her team, they stay in touch with me and they say, well, so-and-so is planning to do this. And I can look at any house in the state with a private program we have. And I see they don't have their homeowners. I tell them to get it before they sell it, because that way they're protected. They don't have to go through the registered voters and address on license hoops. Now, we had one woman who during COVID, she lived in San Francisco. She had a second home in Truckee. During COVID, she moved to her second home, but she never took her homeowners off of San Francisco. She sold the Truckee home and tried to bring it to Napa, but it wasn't her principal residence. It may have been during COVID, but her homeowners remained in San Francisco, and she appealed that and lost. So it is very important that it is your principal residence that you're selling, and that it becomes your principal residence when you buy. Now, when you buy, you can turn around and sell it and not take your base year somewhere else. But when you move in from the other county, it's got to be your principal residence. And you should file your homeowner's exemption here, or register to vote here, or change your driver's license address. But this is a key stumbling block that people aren't aware of. I consider ourselves very liberal in how we treat these. If I can see an image of a driver's license with the address that they had in Los Angeles, I'll accept that, even though they've never filed for their homeowner's exemption. Or if they were, and I can look at registry, we have a statewide voter registration system. So I can check if they're registered to vote there, and we'll accept that. But again, they must and should, they don't have to, but they should file their homeowner exemption when they get to Napa. That way, when they want to do it again, it's clear it's their principal residence. Now, you can have multiple, so the other thing that's tripped people up is people ask, so I own a piece of property, we've been partners. It's a home with a vineyard, and there are two houses on it. We both live there. I've been there 43 years. I sold my half to my partner. He bought me out. Can I do a base year transfer? The answer is no, because we assess that property as one appraisal unit. So it had to change 100%. Now, it's different if you owned a duplex, 2 units, either 2 houses that are seen as multifamily, or 2 units, and you sell your half of that to the other owner, that's 100% of your unit. Okay? In this other case, it wasn't a unit. It wasn't a separate appraisal unit. And so most of you will not be in that situation, but that is an issue. And here's the other thing. We've had husbands and wives sell the property, and just one of them wants to move the base year value. That's fine. Not everybody has to come with the base year value. They agree. Sometimes it's part of a divorce settlement. They say, okay, I get the base year value. I'll let you have a little more whatever from the sale of the proceeds or whatever. So you don't have to bring everybody who owned it, but everybody has to sell it at the same time in the same transaction. And so we've had instances also where you can buy with somebody else. So we have had several instances where a now widowed or widowered owner wants to be near their kids and they decide they're going to buy together because they can buy a bigger house if they do it together, that's fine as long as the original was sold by the widow or widower, and she can buy as long as she gets at least 1% of the new house. She can buy with her child, and they can live there together. And it can be a 2-unit property as long as she lives in one of them. Now, if it's a 2-unit property, not a duplex, but 2 homes, we might only move her base year value to one of the homes. The other home would be reassessed at its full market value. But I have an instance where the mother moved here, bought with her children a nice home. We moved her base year value, and it wasn't adjusted because actually it was adjusted a little bit because they bought up, but it still worked for her, and she's still saving, I forget, $4,000 or $5,000 a year in property taxes. I mean, it's a major savings when you do it. And finally, you can buy and build, or you can remodel. But if you remodel, you've got that 2 years to do it in, or to complete construction. We had one family that didn't make it. They bought a lot, and the 2 years started running then. And then they sold their house, and they couldn't sell their house within the 2 years. They finished the new house, but they couldn't bring their base year value. So you do have that 2 years apply to new construction or remodeling as well. And say you sell for a lot more, which is happening a lot with people in San Francisco and Los Angeles and other places with very high values, you can squeeze the new construction or a major remodel in and still move your base year value because you have that cushion between what you pay. It's what the house is worth, the replacement here in Napa on the day you finish the remodel. But in many cases, if you've sold for $6 million and you put $2 million into a place you paid $3 million for, you're going to qualify. Because at the end of the time, it's only worth $5.4 million when you're finished, and you sold for $6 million. I don't think that will apply to many of the people here, but that is also part of it. And again, you have the 2 years, and we compare the fair market value on the date of completion. So if you bought a lot and then build a house on it, the value of the lot, you pay $100,000 for it. By the time you're done with the house, the land is worth $300,000. That's what we're going to do. We revalue the lot as well as the house at the fair market value when the package is all put together at the end. And there I am. I had to shave my beard off because I have sleep apnea and the mask didn't fit. So now I've gone to a mustache, but I have a lot more energy, let me tell you. So let me talk about the other, what's now called the other piece of this briefly, getting to your question. So on a Prop 19 intergenerational transfer, it's no longer called parent to child, even though that's what it is. You have the same kind of rules. It has to be the parent's principal residence, and the child has to move in. It can be the other way around. It can be the child's principal residence, and they decide to sell to their parents or give it to their parent. But both sides have to make it their principal residence. And remember, I told you we'd say what it's worth on the day that transfer happens. So let's say the parent has a $300,000 base year value, and the home is worth $2 million when they die and they give it to their children. Okay, I talked about that $1 million buffer. So we take that million and add it to the 300,000. So that's $1.3 million, but it's worth $2 million. So that's 700,000 difference, just like with the base year transfer. We take that and add it to the 3. So they have $1 million instead of $2 million, but they're saving $10,000, $12,000 a year in property tax. And then of course, once the child has it, or the parent, whichever one, normally the child, they can then sell it and move that base year if they want once they're 55. Hopefully they won't become severely disabled. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Is there a length of time that they have to be the principal owner, like 2 years?
It's forever.
Well, but
If-
what if they want to sell it?
then that doesn't matter. No, they don't. I mean, they're selling it, so the base year goes away. But if they convert it to a rental, we take that original 2 million and slap it on right then if they continue to own it. So they would go up from $1 million to 2 million if they move out and still own it. We've only had that happen a couple of times because we're very clear in warning people that if this is your principal residence, it's going to stay your principal residence. Now, people die and have more than one child. I have an only child, but they die and they have 3 kids and they leave it to all of them, which is fine. Only one has to move in, not all 3. And they can move in serially. So if Jimmy wants to move in at the beginning and then decides he's grown up and is going to go somewhere else, and Sally wants to move in, she can move in. And then finally the 3rd child of whichever gender can move in.
So, how I were buy my dad's house, for instance.
Right.
Here is property tax from 50 years ago.
Yeah.
How long ago I have to live in there before I can sell it?
A day as long as they move in. One day as long as they move in. As long as you file your homeowners exemption and we do the transfer of his base to you and you fit in that $1 million buffer, you can turn around and sell it to the kids the next day. If your dad were to transfer it or to leave it to the kids, it doesn't apply because it's not parent to child, it's grandparent to grandchild. So you do have to have that intervening step. Well, wait a minute. You're the child. You buy it from your dad. You live there one day and then you turn around and sell to your kid, but the kid's got to move in. Okay, but it has to be your principal residence. Okay, you need to file a homeowner's exemption and you do that under penalty of perjury. No, there's only one for spouses. Well, the lawyers, you're like, oh, well, I don't know about that because I was thinking that too, but there's really clear evidence that you can't.
One day.
Yeah, I mean, it really doesn't happen. But if you move in and let's say you own the house, okay, with your wife, and you want to take advantage of this, she doesn't have to move with you, but she loses her homeowners as soon as you file yours on your dad's house. That's only $70 each. Yeah. Yeah. It's doable. And it sounds tricky, but the idea of the law was to preserve property and families. In this environment, it's hard to do that. So it in a way it sounds shifty, but it's not as far as we're concerned. I mean, most people don't do a day, but you can. Yeah, you could give it to them once you've got it. And it's very important with trust that the trust specify what's going to happen. If it says 3 children, that's fine, and they can continue to own it. But one of them's got to be living in it unless they want that fair market value to be imposed. Yes, ma'am.
So if a house is sold trust, does property does that have anything to do? My mom's house is a trust.
No,
Okay, so it doesn't.
you want your mom's house in a trust, let me tell you. Nothing. If she passes away, the trust says what happens. Do you have siblings? All right, well, you're pretty easy. And if her trust says you inherit the house and it was her principal residence, you just move in and you've got her base year value.
So, but we have to either sell our.
No, you could you could make your house into a rental, but you do have to live in her house.
But I would have to live in her house. Too.
Well, no,
The same.
no, she has to stay there forever because she doesn't have a kid to give it to or sell it to.
Well, I have children myself.
But you wouldn't do it. Yeah, but you wouldn't do, if you give it to your siblings, that's different. There, that gets in, I can talk about that later, but that's a whole sibling buyout kind of thing that there's a whole nother thing
So with that, we get two siblings. One wanted to buy, and then the other one is like not.
all right. All right, so let's go over that. So there are two ways that can be. The trust can say, I want daughter X to have the house and I want son Y to get the money in my estate. That's clear in the trust. There's nothing needs to be done. It's her house. Most trusts don't say that. Most trusts say share and share alike. Okay? Now you can fix share and share alike by what's called a non-pro rata distribution. So what happens in that case, let's say the trust has $1 million in it in cash and a $2 million house paid for, which is often the case when trusts distribute, right? While it's still in the trust, and there are 3 kids. So one of the kids wants the house and the other 2 kids want the cash, all right? So if you take $1 million and $2 million, that's $3 million is the value of the estate, right? So each kid's going to get $1 million if they sold the house, okay? The one kid wants the house. So what she's going to do or he's going to do is he's going to borrow against the house enough money to give. So the siblings are each, she's going to give all the $1 million to her brother and sister, right? So they each have 500. Remember, they're supposed to have $1 million. She's going to borrow $1 million against the house, which is free and clear, and then give that 5 inside the trust. She can't borrow it. The trust has to borrow it from a third party, usually a private money lender. So it's expensive, but it's only for 30 days. So the private money lender lends $1 million based on the house to the trust. The trustee gives that $1 million to the 2 kids and then gives the house to the third child subject to that $1 million loan. And then she goes right in and refinances with her own loan to take the third party private money lender out and bring her interest rates aren't that good right now, but bring it down. I mean, they're going to charge points and a lot of money, but she's going to save, say the base year value was 500. She's going to save $15,000 a year in property taxes. It doesn't take long to pay back the fees that you pay the private money lender, like about 10 minutes, right? People are very hesitant about using private money lenders. They provide a great service. Most of us use banks when we buy houses, but private money lenders are just there for that. And they love these deals because they're going to make $1,000 or something for a 30-day loan, or $2,000. But when you compare that to $15,000, it works out, right? Every year, forever. Now, she does need to remain in that home as her principal residence. She can't turn it into a rental or the whole thing goes away.
And her tax was the same.
It'll be the same. They'll be the same as the mom's, 500,000. Well, it wouldn't be 500 because 2 million. Yeah, it would be. So 500 plus, so it would be $1 million. Yeah, it would be $1 million versus 2 million. She's still saving $11,000 a year in property taxes, and that adds up quickly. That doesn't happen as much as it does. People are very hesitant. I had a lady on the phone. She doesn't want to do a trust. For some reason, she's heard bad stories about trusts. Well, our grandkids, when they turned 18, each had their own trust because if one of them, does something stupid skiing, I don't want to have to probate their estate, whatever it is, So probate's very expensive and trusts sound like they're a lot. In a simple trust, you're talking $3,500 to $4,000. Probating that estate's $20,000. That's a pretty easy choice if you do it. She said, I'm very tough. That's why my husband divorced me. Any other questions on any topic? I'm also the recorder and county clerk. Let me mention something on the recorder side and registrar of voters. I'll talk about that for a second. On the recorder side, we've just instituted a new fraud alert program called Guard Dog. It's free. to us and to you. And Guard Dog sends you an alert if anybody records something against your property. I've been the recorder for almost 30 years now. We've had 2 cases of real estate fraud out of probably 20,000 transaction or 30,000 transaction. Both of them were caught. One of them went to prison. Nobody lost their property. And so it's very, very rare. But if any of you have heard LifeLock or Title Lock or all of those terrible infomercials, don't spend $19.98 a month forever for something. It's like buying life insurance and you're immortal. You know, it doesn't make any sense. But this alert, if you really are concerned, will notify. Now, the problem is you're going to get notified when you refinance, right? Nothing fraudulent's going on, but it can't distinguish between a legitimate recording and an illegitimate recording. It's only if you don't recognize the recording. And people are selling, people who have signed up are going to sell their home. And when they do, they're going to get this alert because it's going to their address. And they know they sold the home, so they're not going to worry about the alert. But it is there, and it's on our website. So if you want to write this down, if you want to go to napacounty.gov, that's our website. And just, do you need a pen, miss?
Okay.
Yeah. And just put in Guard Dog in the search box. Don't try and find it by department. That page will pop up and it tells you, you get a video to show how to sign up. And you can sign up property anywhere in California that you own. I had one woman ask me if she could sign up property that she owns in Stanislaus County, and I said, sure she can. So, and you can do it under more names if you want than just yours. So you can protect your aunt and uncle's property and their property. They don't have to sign up, but you better alert them. They may get alerts about something so they don't think. I have a concern that we're going to get a lot of phone calls from people who get these alerts and don't remember they signed up and think it's fraudulent. And then one person, when I announced this earlier this week, said, is this a scam? Sounds too good. No cost to me and no cost to you. Is this a scam? I said, no, it's not a scam. But we're all so tentative these days and so anxious about what's going on in this crazy world we live in. But it's a great program. And finally, on Registrar of Voters, we have the June primary coming up. You'll be interested to know, and I just talked to the chair of the Democratic Central Committee in Napa County who did not know this. There are 61 candidates for governor on the ballot. 24 Democrats, 12 Republicans, and the balance are other, 25 other. So it takes up a whole page with 3 columns. So you're going to have a lot of reading to do to find your candidate if you've made up your mind yet. Okay, any other questions? Yes, you can have anything you want.
You mentioned doing a major remodel of addition on my existing home. I'd like to hear a little bit more about how that works. I've owned my home a little over 30 years, so the tax basis is
All right. So let's distinguish between renovation and remodeling. So if you own an old Victorian downtown and you still have knob and tube wiring and you've got galvanized pipes and you've got what's called lath and plaster, which this house might have in parts of it because it's probably that old. If you have that and you tear everything out inside, put in copper pipes, put in modern electrical, go back with sheetrock, fix the floors, do all that, that's a renovation. Now you get credit for what was there. So let's say you've owned it a long. How long have you owned your home?
30.
Okay.
It's not an older home.
All right. Well, even so, let's just use, so your base year value, let's say, is 300,000. We're going to add some amount per square foot, but we're not going to add the entire amount you spend on that remodel because it's still a remodel house. It's not a brand new house, right? So you would get an increase. But if you're talking about things like a new roof or changing the kitchen around. So for instance, I redid our kitchen, something you don't want to do I'll tell you a story. So we had to redo, we have clear story windows in our house. Our house will be 61 years old this Thanksgiving. We had to redo the clear story windows because they were leaking. And one thing wives do not like is water all over the inside of the house. So when we did that, we've hired an architect and he did it, and we've had no leaks since. But as he walked through our kitchen, the house was built in 65, and unfortunately my wife was there. He said, "What a nice 60s kitchen." And as soon as he said that, I said, "Guess who's getting a new kitchen?" Which I did. The kitchen remodels, and we didn't do a lot. We didn't change the square footage. We got, new appliances, new granite countertops and all of that. So the key is when you're excuse me, just one sec. Don, I'm going to have to call you back. Okay. I'm more, what?
You need to stay.
No, I don't. I like this. Yeah, I'm on a joint powers authority for all the assessors in California, and that's the chair of the board. And we have a meeting coming up next Wednesday, and he had a question about something. I sort of am behind the scenes helping with stuff. So in your case, new roof, new paint, new carpet, all of those are called deferred maintenance. It's only primarily a renovation, which it doesn't sound like you're saying, or an addition. If you add on a new bedroom and bath, a master bedroom, or do something like that, or a second story, which I don't recommend because you'll never get the money back you put into a second story, we'll add only the new square footage. It doesn't affect the base year value of the land or the house. Okay? Yeah, right. So, yes.
So if you move a wall, like in the bathroom remodel, I don't know.
Yeah, if you put in, probably not. Now, if you went from a tub to a brand new, which I'm about to do because my wife passed away, so I have a life partner now, and she said the bathtub doesn't work right, so we're getting a new bathtub. Actually, we're getting a new walk-in shower. That will cause a little bit because you've upgraded, but again, it's not going to be a lot. Is that a little bit? Yeah. If you do a major remodel, but just expanding the bathroom interiorly. If you add the outside walls, like our son-in-law and daughter have added 290 square feet to make what was an old bathroom into a closet and a new bath, they're going to get hit for the 290 square feet, but not for the fixtures, right? They had a tub, so they may get hit something for a brand new walk-in shower, but they're not going to get, they had a sink, they're going to have a sink. They had a toilet, they're going to have a toilet. It's only if you go outside or you do a major renovation.
And the trigger is getting a permit from.
You have to get it. So we're going to do this walk-in shower, and the contractor told me it's optional. Let me tell you, it's not. And not that he was being a fly-by-night contractor. He charged me more money to get the permit, but his base didn't have a permit. I said, guess who should have a permit from Napa County? Yours truly. So I said, we're going to have a permit. And he just came up and measured today, and they're getting ready to file for the permit and do all that. So yeah, the permit's what triggers it. Now, I'll tell you one more story. I don't know, what time do you want to break? So yeah, okay. So we had a lawyer not a bad one, a lawyer in Anchorage who wanted to move to Napa. So he sent his wife down, and she bought a house up near Yountville. And after they moved in, the house caught on fire. Fortunately, it wasn't a bad fire, but an electrical panel caught on fire. They got it out. Nobody was injured. The house wasn't badly damaged, but it turned out the prior owner had done 1,900 square foot addition without permits. And here's the problem. I'm not the building department. I'm not a life safety person. But if our staff, when we're field inspecting, our appraisal staff see something that's dangerous, they're going to turn it in. I have a fiduciary duty, and so do they as county employees, public servants, to report dangerous conditions. But if we see a garage that's been converted to living quarters, and we're not building inspectors, but it looks okay, we don't tell the building department. the owner is going to want to tell the building department, because when they go to sell and it turns out they have an illegal, unpermitted garage conversion, they're going to have to pay triple fees, plus have inspections done, maybe open the wall to make sure they did like this electrical panel. So permits are for your protection, or they do raise money for the county, but it's only enough to pay for the permit, and we don't make money on permits. So you always want a permit as a property owner, and the realtors know, and Florence and her team, Olivia, can tell you about it. You don't want to sell a property if you're a realtor, because they have a fiduciary duty. Even if you disclose that there's something unpermitted, that can come back and bite you when the buyer gets told by the city they have to tear down that unpermitted. So permits are good for everybody. And realtors are hesitant, not all realtors. And I can understand they don't want to push their client, especially if they're the selling agent. But I tell everyone, come and look at your building record in my office, because my records are better than the city and the counties in terms of building permits, because we made notations starting in 1964 in pencil. We have the permit number, which is very helpful to show that, yeah, that addition was done with a permit. If there's no permit number, they're in deep doo-doo, right? Yeah, right. Especially if you're uncertainty. And, realtors don't want to look like cops and say to their seller, you really ought to fix this before you sell it. You go to the county, find out what you need to do, and get it permitted. Because the buyer's agent, if they're doing their job, is also going to warn the buyer, careful, this is a pig in a poke at this property.
Pretty much everything with permits, right? Except changing a light bulb.
Well, it's, yeah, there's very little. So in my case, we've got the plumbing and we've got the bathtub, but it's both plumbing and sanitation, because they're not actually not going to change the outflow of the tub into the sanitary. We have a septic tank, but I want it inspected because we are replacing the plumbing. It's 61 years old and it doesn't work at the moment. So that's why we're doing it. Yes, Nord.
Go back to my
Yeah.
original question. So I have a house that's protected crop with teeth. I've been there 40 years. I follow law, keep houses away. My wife died. If you inherit that, I can transfer my homeowner's exemption.
Well, you don't transfer it. You just get a new homeowner's exemption.
We live there for a day or a week or a month, and then I sell it to my dog. She gets that original property. Can I move back to my
Oh, of course, once she has it.
and that property tax doesn't change?
No, absolutely not. You didn't sell it. You didn't do anything to it. Well, I'm being a little facetious. You're probably going to want to fix it up and do some stuff, but just file your homeowners. The other thing is, and don't remember, this is under penalty of perjury. I've never had to pursue anybody in my 40 years as county assessor for fraud or perjury, but it is going to be your principal residence for some period of time. And in many cases, we've had this happen. The child, you move in and do all the fixing up while you're there. You have to move in. You can't just file a homeowner's exemption. You say under penalty of perjury, I moved here on X date in question 2. As long as you move there and stay as long as you want, you can then transfer to your daughter, and she has a year to move in after you move out, but she'd probably move right in, right? That's the whole idea.
I can physically, I get you got physically move there or spend the night or a few things in.
Yeah.
And I move
Well,
myself.
you have to, your conscience has to say, I just signed under penalty of perjury. This is my principal residence. And what you need to do to make your conscience right is up to you. No, that's all right. Mark looks like a good guy. Yeah. Yeah. Normally it doesn't happen that way because people move in and clean it up and do all the other stuff, instead of just allowing. So if the trust, however, I don't know if her parents, it is. If the trust says it goes to our granddaughter, you're out of luck because it becomes irrevocable. right? But if it says it goes, does your wife have siblings? So she'd need to do she'd have to do a non-pro rata distribution.
Another question.
Yeah.
For dark characters, I go down there, write a check, I hand it to a person, and it's notice online you can out information. Every time I ask her, I say, I pay taxes on a tax year, and you give me receipts on the fiscal year. So I've got
No, you pay on a fiscal year. It's not a calendar year. That's on a calendar year. So you got to take the April payment and the December payment. Yeah.
Can't you guys add a button to the online where I can go 2025
Yes.
tax year?
It's there. Yeah, we have now up to 12 years past taxes on the website.
I want to hit one button, get one piece of paper on the taxes. Like, I want one sheet.
You can't get one sheet that shows 2 years. Nice try. You can't do that. No. I get a lot of phone calls from people who said, they're selling their house or they sold it and now they're filing and they want to know what their capital gains is. I can tell them what they paid for it. Sometimes they don't know, especially if they've been in their house for a long time.
See, I just want this kind of neat for one piece of paper.
Yeah. Yeah. We're neat for each too, and we're on a fiscal neat. Why? So last thing on registrar of voters. So the election is June 2nd. You'll be getting your ballots on May 4th. They should be there by that next Saturday. The post office is going through some trial at the moment, but you should have your ballot no later than May 11th or 12th if you don't contact our elections office. And then you can mail it back. And one other big change is the post office has changed how they're postmarking. So if you want to wait until the last day and give it to your carrier or put it in a blue box, it may not get postmarked that day. In fact, it almost will not. So that means if you want to mail your ballot back, you got to do one of two things. You should either mail it by Tuesday, the 26th of May, which is a week before the election, to make sure it gets postmarked, or you should go to the post office and have them hand cancel it in your presence. There's no charge for that. You just walk up, hand them the envelope, they'll cancel it, and you drop it in the slot. It's postmarked. That's the only other safe way. We had a woman who took her tax bill, speaking of this, Mark, took her tax bill to the Trancas post office on December 7th or 8th, dropped it in the slot at the Trancas post office. It arrived on December 23rd after going to Honolulu and back. And I have I love the post office. I mean, they're a great service. They're one of the most important government services there are. They're the only people who deliver to 156 million addresses across the United States. I was able to find out what happened to it, and the tax collector in this very limited instance did forgive the penalties because the post office said it got stuck to another piece of mail and went to Honolulu. Without that evidence, he would have charged. It was a $4,000 penalty, right, for being a day late. So you got to be real careful. Anything else on any topic? If I don't know the answer, I'll make it up.
Okay, your bathtub changing to a walk-in bathtub?
Mhm.
That needs a permit.
Yes, it should.
Changing, okay, a bathtub to a jacuzzi tub? Is that
You probably should get one for your protection, not for the counties. I mean, it takes a
for
lot.
reselling the house?
Exactly. Right. I mean, the buyer wants to know that stuff's been done under the, benefit of clergy, as we say, right?
So what
You can even have slow.
what if my mom's house, which is 60 years old, and my parents, I don't know if they had done everything permitted over the years. How is the property dealt with in that sense?
Well, you should come and check, because if you know stuff about the house that we don't, Or if we do and it's not permitted, you can come and look at the building record with your parents' permission, and then we can tell you where is their home. I don't need to. Oh, yeah, but you can.
Curious. My dad, I know he like wanted my room there when I was a teenager. He a closet into the garage, and no one.
That probably is not an issue, but if the closet stuck out the side of the house, yeah, no, that doesn't happen often. Yes.
We were interested in the remodeled addition in our house, and I had some issues with her building department and permitting stuff. Area to do the remodel, it told that needed a plumbing permit, I needed a construction permit, need an electrical permit, some other ones. I keep passing rules. Use your electric, go to electric for regulation top when you need a permit. And in plumbing, he determined that we're faucet connected to the bowels coming out the wall. That needed a permit for that, and the first tree went in. And I could test of that. Because the duct was so, then we hit up a balls to be a concrete hydrant, we had permit to hit up a hose. So long story short, after we discuss this at length and build out a permit application, the stop permit is no permit required. It wasn't construction, but it was just changing cabinets. The other part where I had an issue with it was the fee from family with based on the cost of the project. And I asked the question, what do you do different? Like a high-end kitchen, there's some of the friction particle board cabinets, crap. It costs $5,000, might cost $80,000. What do you do different for the fee you charge? That's really different.
Well, that's why they ask the person who's applying for the fee what they think the value of the project is. Now they will they confirm that against the book that says how much so if I say I'm going to do this walk-in shower for $1,000 and apply for a permit, they're going to challenge me on that. Was your challenge with the county building department or with the city of Napa? A lot of other things. I'm a county official, and I was just talking to some of my friends, the other county department heads. They said most people don't know the difference between the city and the county. They say the streets aren't good out in Alta Heights. Well, that's a city issue. If the streets aren't good in Pope Valley, that's a county issue.
Since they started look down at the wire, basically what you're saying about your red, well, obviously change the value. Well, you're not going to see you and see if you can do something there.
No. I mean, mine going from a bath to a walk-in shower is probably not going to, they're going to look at the permit because it's me, right? But they're not going to probably change. On the kitchen remodel, I won't say how much I spent, but it was more than the number you just mentioned at the high end. And I only received a $6,000 increase in value because everything else was there. We had a refrigerator. What?
I bought in Texas. Oh,
No, just in value. So and that's what we do for, and the things you mentioned about even if there is some value, it's minor compared, because you haven't added that much. What we're looking at is how much value did you add to the house?
John, I have a question too, because we as realtors run into this a lot with properties that show as a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. And on tax records, it shows 2-bedroom, 1 bath. What is the process?
Just contact us.
Okay. And then you guys come inspect.
We don't even inspect. We can usually tell. So there's a question as to what's a bedroom. Does it need a closet? Does it need an exit? Those kinds of things. So we get that a lot. And you should just contact me. Just send me an email and our staff will look at it. We can usually do it in-house. We've had a couple of instances where things were where either there was work done that we weren't aware of, and then we have to go out. But in that kind of just descriptive, we usually take care of it.
Very good. Question.
Yeah.
The process of initiating the intergenerational transfer, what does that look like? Does that happen with the child, or does the original homeowner have to start that before their death?
No, it happens upon the death or upon a transfer. You don't do it ahead of time.
So the child of the
whoever,
Owner has to start it with.
or the successor trustee of, some trusts have trustees who are not a family member, and that trustee would then start it. Or the single will trigger it.
Is there a period time in which that has to happen?
Yeah. Before you sell it. And we don't issue an intergenerational if it's really only for a few months. Don't apply for an intergenerational if you're really going to sell the house within a year. I mean, it's not worth our time or your time. Might as well get it done, because otherwise that supplemental that you're going to have to pay gets after you've sold it, and then it gets very complicated. So it's really in a true family situation where someone's going to move in.
So to the close question, can a house just live in the trust? Does it have to change over?
No, we have that happen a lot.
It can just live in its trust form, is how it said.
Our ranch is in a trust that was created in 1979, and it's still in the trust.
Which then means that the property taxes wouldn't stay the same.
Not necessarily, because inside the trust stuff can happen, like siblings can buy each other out within the trust. That would trigger a reassessment. The trust is not a shield against reassessment. Things can happen inside it.
Nothing changes.
If nothing changes, it doesn't do anything. And when you distribute, if nothing changes, what happens a lot is we don't know about a death because they don't die in Napa County. And then we have to go back 8 years if they don't qualify for an intergenerational. And that's not good for anybody, especially when they want to sell the property and they've got 8 years of big escape assessments because we didn't know about the death, which did trigger a change of ownership. So it's really important to keep the assessor's office informed if things happen inside the trust. So if it's a husband and wife trust and the husband dies, that's interspousal, but it's nice for us to know that.